Some brands offer you low finance, or cashback, or servicing.
Renault don't do ors. We do ands. The Renault Kadjar with 1.91% APR and €1,000 cashback and 3 years servicing, saving you thousands. Renault, the brand with the ands. Visit your local Renault dealer. Finance is made under a hire purchase agreement. Terms and conditions apply. Deposit required subject to lending criteria. See Renault.ie.
You're listening to Life Strategies with Monique. Get ready to be empowered and inspired.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Life Strategies with Monique. In this week's episode, we are talking with Prophetess Felicia Glover. Today, she's going to share with you on how she was able to bounce back from a life of depression and abuse, and how she was able to move forward into a life of purpose and destiny through healing and dance ministry. You don't want to miss today's episode because she's going to share with you some powerful strategies for life on how you can overcome those challenges in your life. So I don't know what you're dealing with today, but you need to definitely stay tuned. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of Life Strategies with Monique. I have with me today an apostolic leader by the name of Felicia Glover. She is under Apostle Elise, who is located in New York. She is a praise dancer and also a prophet of God, and she has an amazing story that she's going to share with you today on what it means to live a life of purpose after being in an abusive marriage. She currently delivers her message through healing and deliverance and dance and ministry. Felicia, welcome to the show. I'm so excited that you are here today, and I can't wait to hear your story that you're going to share with our listeners. Hey, Felicia.
Hello, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm so glad that you just decided to be on the show today, because I'm so excited to hear your story, because I know your story is going to impact and change women's lives all over the world, because just in hearing your story, there's so many things and so many strategies that I know that our listeners out there can take away and definitely use to change their lives. So let's just start from the beginning of your story and tell our listeners a little bit about your background so that they can get to know a little bit more about you.
Okay. Well, of course, as you stated before, my name is Felicia Glover. I actually, I'm 49 years old. I'll be 50 this year.
Oh,
I have
amen.
3 kids. Yes, thanks to God. I have 3 kids. I have 2 boys and a girl. The ages are 28, 25, and 21. I have 2 grandkids. The ages are 9 and 8. I live here in Mobile, Alabama. I've been here all my life up until the time when I was married to my first husband. We were living, of course, in Columbus, Georgia for a short period of time. I graduated from Murphy High School, year of 1987. I'm a city employee with the city of Mobile as a municipal enforcement officer. I've been there almost, now it'll be almost 12 years. So I'm a safety inspector, going out, making inspections, plus doing the will of the Father with going out, ministering in dance, as well as healing and deliverance with the young men and the old women and the old men. So there's no age when it comes to God and what he's doing with his people. But yes. I just thank God that you allowed me to be here on your show. So I give God the praise for you allowing me to speak on today about my story.
Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about your story and your journey. I know you told us a little bit that you graduated from Murphy High School. You're from the Mobile area, but there's always a journey that God seems to take us on. Start where you got married and where that journey started with your husband.
I got married at the age of 24. At the time when I got married to my first husband, I only had one child at that time. So with me having my youngest son, he was, well, I guess he was about 3 years old. So we decided to get married only because, I guess I should say, when you're going through things, you're young and you're wondering how people would think of you. You've been in relationships, you've been here, you've been there. So with me being in the relationships of, my youngest son, father, and a couple other guys, and you can't be afraid of your story. You have to tell your story. So, of course, my story is a testimony to others. So this marriage, I was married for about almost 2 years. So with me being married to my first husband, my son and I, like I said, he was about 3. I think he was 3 at the time. And so when I got pregnant by my first husband, of course, that was an embarrassment to my family. So instead of me waiting to get married, because I knew I was young, wasn't really ready to get married, and he and I had never talked about getting married. Of course, he appeared to be a wonderful man. He worked, brought home the check. He paid the bills. He only worked and actually came home. He never went out, never did anything under the norm. He was always a working guy at the time because we wasn't married. So, but he always took care of home. So I thought that I was getting involved with, I guess I would say, my Prince Charming. So, but yes, my family found out that I was pregnant at that time. My father and get married. And I really did not want to get married because I knew I was young, but because they thought that it would be better because we was from a Christian-based family. So, when you're thinking about what the people are going to say, and to make a long story short, so we went ahead and we got married. Once we got married, at that time I was still pregnant. So I had my daughter. When I had my youngest daughter, she's my only daughter. When I had my daughter, we decided to actually move to Columbus, Georgia. And when we moved to Columbus, Georgia, that's when all of the abuse started.
Mm.
Yes, ma'am. But we
So
moved there. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
what were some of the signs that you began to see as soon as you moved? Because you say everything was great before you left, but the moment you moved out of town, now the circumstances had changed. What had changed in your relationship between you moving from one place to another?
I would say, as a woman, I felt as though when we moved, a part of me, moved from. I moved there in Columbus, even though it was my family. I moved to Columbus, Georgia, to be with some of my family members. One of my cousins asked if we would come there. We can start our life there together. So once we got there, things did not go according to plan because we had to first of all live with her. And so it was my husband, myself, my 2 kids. And so we were in this 1-bedroom, it was 2-bedroom apartment, but of course we were in 1 bedroom, all trying to live in that 1-bedroom house. So when we got there, things changed. And what I began to see is that he actually did not want me to go places. I could not do anything. If she had company, she would have cookouts. She would have different things, people coming over. He would want me to stay inside the house. And I was trying to give her at this time, this is when I noticed, okay, he's changing. And because he was not like that, mind you, he was not like that when we were living in Mobile, Alabama. But we were only married for a couple of months because this marriage, it just seemed like it just went so quickly and everything happened so fast and everything ended so fast. But when we were there in Georgia, of course, I noticed this immediately changed, with him. He wanted to start being violent. If someone would come over, and I would say, well, baby, you want to go outside and we can join the party with everybody, or we can join the cookout. My cousin would tell me, well, we're going to do this on such and such date. Y'all are welcome to come out. And he was like, no, we're going to stay inside. So here I am trying to make her believe, but no, I just don't want to come. You know how women, we try to always take up for the guys. And no, we're just going to stay inside, trying to give her signs like, well, No, he said, like he said, we're not going to do this because I'm knowing if she just pick up on the part that I'm saying, this is what he's saying. I'm not saying it. He's saying it. So part of the controlling started coming, part of him just being jealous. And the more and more, and the more we, stay together, the more the violent and the verbal abuse and the mental abuse started. So I just did not know which way to go once that started taking place in my life. It all happened so quickly, and I wouldn't have never even imagined it because he was not like that here in Mobile. I really didn't see any signs, which I should have but you're being young, you never realize the background of other people. And I should have known because of the fact that he was not close with his mother. He was not close with his father, his siblings, they were all like just always at each other. And I never saw a closeness with anybody in his family, but he was just this quiet, humble person that I was like, well, maybe it's them, trying to still defend him because, of course, I'm young and I'm not really aware of all of this. So I'm thinking, he's okay. He's still a good guy, but I was like, well, you want to go see your mom? You want to go see your dad? No, I don't, just making up excuses that they were all these type of mean people that he never really wanted to be around. So I think all of that was pretty much something that was rooted inside of him all that, when he was younger, but I just wasn't aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
So when we got to Georgia, it just seemed like all of it started coming out. It started manifesting.
Mm. So when you began to see all of his anger and all of these different signs start coming to surface, why didn't you leave before it even, it got worse? What makes it so difficult for a woman to stay in a relationship when she knows it is not the best place for her? What keeps a woman feeling as though she's so defenseless and that she can't, rise above the circumstances that she's in?
I would say in my part, you're concerned. You're worrying about what people are going to say. You're thinking it's going to get better. Then you're trying to hold on because then you're trying to make sure, okay, it's going to end. It'll get better and we're going to be okay. It's just going to be this one or two times. He really didn't mean it. Then he would apologize. Now, baby, I love you. And, and the women, we stay there thinking it'll get better, but it never gets better. It to me, and I can speak this for every woman that I've come across that's been in an abusive relationship, it never gets better. It gets worse and worse because the person has not gotten help. They do not want help. They do not realize that it's a problem. And we as women, we stay there thinking that we can change them or we can help them or we can make it better. But it's something that's within them that they actually the ones that need the help. And so the abuse get worse and worse instead of getting better and better. So we think of all kind of excuses. The kids need to be with their father. I can't start over because we just moved all the way to Georgia. I pretty much packed everything up, and not to mention the house that we lived in Mobile, it was my home. So I had given up everything and we kind of transitioned to Georgia. So I put everything in storage, and then we got to Georgia. Then I had to get rid of some stuff because the house wasn't big enough in Georgia. So I had to let a lot of things, I had to give away a lot of things so that we can have enough room to put all of that. So it was just a lot of excuse. I didn't want my family to realize that, oh, she just got married. She got a baby. She got 2 kids. So here she is. Now she's having problems. What is the problem? So I just did not want to leave because of worrying about what others would say.
Wow. That's amazing. It really, it makes me think about the word denial really came to mind when you were talking about a woman seems to think it's going to get better. It's going to get better, but it tends to get worse and worse and worse. So it's really a place of denial that a woman doesn't want to acknowledge that there's really a problem or that there's an issue.
Ma'am.
So they refuse to acknowledge. So what would you say to a woman who is in denial, or how could they overcome being in denial so that they could be in a place of safety?
a woman you have to realize, and I had 2 kids. I had to realize that I needed to. It was about myself and my kids. I had to put my kids first. And what took place is that with that I would encourage every female to always be mindful that we deserve more, we deserve greater, we deserve better because our Father says so. And we should not belittle ourselves to feel as though we are going to be able to, things are going to get better if we stay there and help them. One thing about a man, they have to be the one to say they won't change. There is no person that I know of that can change anyone. That person has to want the help. And I truly can say this, me being in this marriage, this guy would choke me until I pass out. I mean, in the same home with my cousin, and she had no clue that all this was taking place. So we as women, we'll stay in these places of abuse, and we try to tell people, but then you don't want to tell too much because you still want to stay there with him. So it's kind of like I didn't want to tell them a whole lot about him because a part of me was wanting to protect him. A part of me was wanting my family to stay together. A part of me because I had just moved, so I didn't want to give up, losing what I was trying to gain all over again, but it was becoming a disaster. So immediately, even after moving, both of us got a job immediately, and we got out of the apartment. We moved into our own place. Oh my God, it got worse. It got so much worse it was starting to affect my youngest son, my oldest son at this time. He was actually going and he was seeing all of the abuse. And that part of me that really, really started really weighing on my mind. And I was like, Lord, I've got to get out of this. And even when my mother, anyone would call me, I would try to give them every hint in the book to say, I need help. And it's like you're opening up your mouth, but nothing is coming out. And that part of me, I felt like I was in a cage or in a dark place, and I'm screaming for help, but nothing is coming out. And they would call me all times of night, and my husband would say, you better not answer that phone. If you answer the phone, you're going to die tonight. And so here I am, and I have a son in the room. He's screaming because at this time, my son was not used to sleeping in a room by himself. It was always just he and I. So he began to he was having bad dreams, bad nightmares. He would scream out, and my ex-husband was so abusive mentally and physically and verbally, he would not even want me to go and check on the child. So at this time, I'm like, I got to get out of this, Lord. If you just get me out of this state, how can I get out of this? I need somebody to come and knock on the door. Just come and do this, because we were so secluded. It was my mom's sister that was living there, my first cousin, but I could not reach out to my own family. He had no one there, but I still felt like I was trapped in this dark place, not having anybody to reach out to.
Right.
And so I would advise any woman to please know that you have got to open up your mouth, because it's going to be one or two things. Either both of y'all can end up dead, or either you can end up dead, or he can end up dead, or the kid, it can go vice versa. You just never know what will happen. But I would encourage any female not to stay in an abusive marriage or abusive relationship, because it's not worth it. They're not going to change. You cannot make them change. There's nothing you can say or do. They can cry. Oh, trust me, they would cry. They would pull up the soft face. They would do everything to say, baby, I'm sorry. We're going to get through this. And of course, I fell for it. I fell for it for months and months and months, and it never got better.
Wow. And I heard a powerful thing that you said about man. Definitely. He has to want to be able to change himself, because otherwise you can't make a man change. It has to be within them. But in itself, with you, at that moment, when you realized that your son was in danger, and you realized that I needed to get out of this marriage, I need to find safety. How did you actually end up getting out of that marriage to where you found love?
Oh my God. Well, it was the day I remember just like it was yesterday. My son actually, my ex-husband, he was like, again, he was just so abusive. And I found it in my first cousin, she had come to Georgia. She and I had had some words, so we kind of lost communication. And this is one of my cousins. We were just so close. If you can just talk to me on the phone or I can speak with her on the phone, we can hear in the voice that something is not right. Oh, my God. So she had come home to Georgia to be with her mom, and we had not spoken maybe in about, I would say about 7 to 8 months or almost a year. We had not spoken. This particular day, we were tossing, my husband and I were tossing over tables. Things were breaking. He was choking me. I mean, we were literally fighting. And the kids, my daughter, she had just turned 12 months. She was screaming and hollering. My son was screaming and hollering. And the glass was breaking. We had glass tables and everything. And he was tossing me over the tables. I mean, it was just really verbal and detrimental abuse. It was really just, words cannot describe it. But she called. The phone had rang. And my cousin called. And what made her call that day, I know it had to be God. It had to be an angel. She called and she heard it in my voice. And she said, "Hey, how you doing? I was just letting you know I was in Georgia." I said, "Oh, I'm doing good." I said, "Girl, just trying to clean up this glass." Giving her a hit again. Mm-hmm. And she said, "What glass?" I said, "Some glass that, Terry and I just, he just broke some glass." And she said, "No, sound like something is wrong." I said, "Well, it is, And she said, "Well, I'll be over there." Thank God they came over. And when they got there, he had left and went to work. And they knew right then that I had been abused all this time. And so they had taken me over to my aunt's house. And when we got there, my aunt is the type person, she just do not play. So they called the police, and the police came, and this is something that women always do that's in abusive relationships or marriages. The police came, and he said, "We can press charges today." But guess what I said? I said, "No, that's okay. I'm going to leave. I'll leave him," because I did not want to see my husband at that time go to jail. Even though he had been abusing me, but I'm like, "Lord, I can't see him go to jail. I don't want to see him in jail." So as females, we always do that. We always feel like, don't call the police. Don't call the police on him. He'll be all right. Just leave and you go your separate ways and he go his separate ways. But baby, let me tell you, I got out of the marriage, thank God. I got out of the marriage due to the fact that my aunt came over and all of them realized what had been going on. I did not call the police at that time, but what had taken place is my aunt called my mom and my dad and everybody. And they began to tell them what was going on. And so my brother, they brought the U-Haul down and they picked me up. And he had no clue. I couldn't tell him that I was leaving because if I would have told him that I was leaving, it would have been worse. Right. So I had to just get out immediately without him knowing. They actually just knocked on the door one morning early with the U-Haul. And that's how I got of it when I was living in Georgia. But that does not take the place. The case, when I moved back home, he had to come back home, which is Mobile, because this is where we both live. So he came back as well. Of course, with the sob story, "I love you. I'm going to kill myself if you don't come with me. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I need you in my life." Of course, I go back and things started all over again as well. And I got my own place again, got back on my feet. And it got so bad again to where he had to actually leave the house. I got a restraining order. He could not come over unless, someone was there with him. He couldn't come over. He would go as far as taking my car loose, unplugging the plugs on the car. He would come over at night, just do anything to the car so I wouldn't be able to get the kids to school at this time. My oldest son was in Head Start, so I had to get him back and forth to school. He would flat the tires. He would do anything to try to make me miserable. It was just that bad. And so how I actually got out of this marriage, and I thank God on this night, my ex-husband had come over to the house, and he had asked my when they come over, I said, well, okay, you can stay. I didn't have a phone back then, you all. This was like, I guess maybe early 90s, maybe the 90s? Had to be like 95, 96. Well, anyways, cell phones really wasn't popular. So I didn't have a phone in the home. I had just moved into my apartment. I did not have a phone. So one of my old friend guys had stopped over this particular Sunday. He had stopped over. I remember the day. It was a Sunday. He stopped over and we was just standing on the porch. My ex-husband drove down the street and saw him on the porch, walked up, got in the house. I said, well, I cooked dinner. You're welcome to, I'm trying to make this as short as possible. He come in and I cooked dinner. I said, well, you can eat dinner with the kids and then you're going to have to leave. People, he did not leave that night. This was the worst night of my life. And I told my friend that was standing there, I said, this is not going to go well. Please call my aunt. I said, and I called the numbers out to him fast. This guy was so afraid, so he left. He left without even taking the number down to call anyone for me. I said, please call someone to help me. And so he did not do this. As soon as that guy left, my husband shut the door. He shut the door and he barricaded my 2 kids and myself in the home all night long with a knife by my throat and by the kids' throat, and said he was going to actually kill all of us that night, including himself, and nobody was going to live. That was the scariest night of my life. That was the most scariest night of my life. And I said, Lord, if you get me out of this, I promise you, God, I will do your will. I promise you I will not go back. And that night, my son, my oldest son, his school teacher used to come and pick him up from school. And when she would pick him up, he had a folder that he had to take to school every day that I had to sign. The only reason why I got out of that, of course, I skipped one thing that I got to go back to, and that's the abusive part in the sex. He actually used to make me, I would say rape me, even though we were considered married. He would force himself on me with raping me because he wanted what he wanted. And so even this particular night, I just laid there. I was like, Lord, I just cannot take this. If you just save me, save my kids, just get me out of this. So all night long, he was there with the knife by all four of us. I had a 3-bedroom apartment, but it was myself, my ex-husband, and my 2 kids. We were all in one bed together because he made it known that all of us was going to die laying there in that bed. So it became morning, and I got up. He was still asleep. I hurry up, and I wrote a letter to my son's teacher. Mind you, he's 5. And I said, Tyrell, I said, please, baby, when you get in the car with your teacher, give her this folder and tell her to read it. I had to write a letter, and I said, I need you to call my cousin, the one that actually, that came to Georgia and rescued me. I had to write her the same note. I said, please call her and tell her I need them to come over to my house this morning, that my husband is here. That's all I put in there. When they got there, they knocked on the door. He was still asleep. They knocked on the door and came in, and he finally he saw them, and at that moment, he just walked out the door. He walked out the door, and we never once had any more words anymore, and that's how I got out of it.
Wow. That
Yes.
is just so powerful how you had to use the courage just to be able to get your son to just give a note to your son's teacher. That is just so amazing. And that is just showing the love of God and how he saved you in that.
Yes, ma'am. And I tell you, when going through abuse, we as females, we feel as though we have to take on all of this, for the kids. We don't want our kids to grow up being alone. We don't want we're concerned about what people would say and how they would react. And that was my main thing, worrying about what people would say. And my own father, which was my biological father, he actually asked me, and this hurt me to the core. He called me when I was living in Georgia, and he said, well, what are you doing wrong? What are you doing wrong for him to do this? And my father and I, we had a great relationship. We had an excellent relationship, but I had never seen my father abuse my mom. But
Mm-hmm.
my father was an abusive man. He was an abusive man because he abused my mom. But just so happened, my brother and I, we did not see that because we were toddlers and she got out of the marriage. So when he asked me, what were you doing to cause him to do that? A part of me, I could have just died. I could have died. This is the same man that walked me down the aisle that asked me, what were you doing for this man to abuse you? And of course, I'm going to say this. You know, we talk and they said, well, what causes people to become abusive? I would say no matter what a person may say or do, and yes, in relationships or marriages, no one agrees to everything. But for the most, there shouldn't ever be a time where a man should feel as though they should put their hands on a woman physically.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So
that part of me was just truly, I was outdone.
right. Wow. So now that you finally were able to get out of this relationship and life is starting over for you, and you finally get to a place to where you're emotionally okay to finally find a new relationship, a new love, and a new life. Let's talk a little bit about that, how you were able to get above, rise above, the bruises and move into a place of love, because a lot of times people tend to think that, oh, I've been through this, I've been through that, life is not going to get any better for me. This is my lot in life. I'll never get married again. But you didn't take that. You didn't take that point of view. You were like, okay, yes, that happened to me, but you know what? There's life after these bruises. There's life after these scars. So, even though the heartache was detrimental and things were horrible at one time in your life, you rose above that. And I want my listeners out there to know that, yeah, even though you went through all of that, you rose above it. And I want them to know that they can do that. And I want you to tell them how they can do that, because your story is just so inspiring.
Yes. I actually, and even though, and with the question that you asked, even though it was only the abuse for a short period of time, but who wants the abuse to be for 5 and 10 and 20 years? I mean, I can just truly say, God, I thank you that I didn't have to go through it that long. But with me rising up out of it, it was a struggle. It was a struggle at first. And at first I thought, I did not want to actually get married, but you do and you don't. So you really don't know which way to go, but you want to be loved. And so I began to get in another relationship. And the guy, he was, oh my God, he was so sweet to me. It was my youngest son's father. And so he was one of the best men that I possibly have ever been with, besides my husband now. But I can truly admit to this because I'm God-fearing, and I know you can only be truthful to yourself. And when you know who you are and what you've gone through, this is a testimony for me, because the abuse made me, it affected my life, not only my son's life, it affected my life. It affected my son's life to now. My son is 28, but he has that abusive spirit. He has that spirit to where he wants to abuse other people, because he saw that. And so I have to constantly pray, and that emotional part was in me. It was rooted in me, but I had no clue that it was. But it was there. It was lying dormant all of those years. I'm thinking that I'm over this. I'm out of the marriage. I'm doing great. I'm with somebody who loved me, and he's taking care of the kids, and he's taking care of home. But I did not treat this guy the way he should have been treated because of how I was treated. So I had taken all of my baggage that I had into this relationship because I was afraid to open up. I was afraid to let him completely in. So I became the one that was controlling. I became the one that was physical. I became the one that wanted to take over and be the dominant one and be the one that was going to wear the pants and put down the rules and tell you what you were going to do and what I was not going to do. So because I was not saved, and I can admit to that, I was not saved, didn't know anything. I grew up in church. But I had started, we grew up in church. They say, okay, she's gone, but she'll come back because her mom raised up, her grandparents raised up in church. So thank God that I'm back now. I'm back. But at that point of my life, I treated this person so badly. I abused him physically. I abused him mentally. I mean, to the point of putting my hands on him. But he never hit me back. He never did any of those things. But I was looking for him too, because that's what I was used to.
Right.
I was used to people doing that to me, so I began to take that to that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, things like that affect your life, and you have no clue that you are walking in that emotionally for all of those years. So how I got out of it, and I'm sorry, I just went on and on, but how I got out of it.
I love that, because one of what you just said is so profound, because what happened in your life, the tables now had turned, and now you wanted to be a protector for yourself because you didn't want to be in that same situation again. So now you become the controller. And that's something that, as a healing and deliverance, a teacher myself, understand that there is a cycle that goes around and around and around. When an individual wants to protect themselves, they automatically kind of like do the same thing. So I totally understand it. My listeners out there, I think they really need to understand that it's a protective mode that we go into. It's like a fight-flight mode, something like that. You want to protect yourself, and that was the place that you had found yourself in, being in that protective mode, and the one that wants to now control because you have been so abused. But now God has delivered you from that, and that's the amazing part.
He has.
God delivered you from that, and I just see the glory all over your life and how He's using you now, because you are in doing healing and deliverance now. You're doing praise dancing, and look, I'm telling your story, but I want you to share that with us. How you got to that place.
Yes, ma'am. I'm actually now in a marriage. I've been in this marriage with my husband, Mickey Glover. We've been married now. October will be 19 years. I met my husband. Actually, we grew up together. Believe it or not, we grew up together, but we did not talk back then. We dated just, school kids, and you don't know much about dating when you're 14 or 15, but nothing happened. So when I got older, we got together and we got married in 6 months. 6 months, and we've been together for 19 years.
Wow.
My husband is, I'm telling you, he's such a wonderful man of God. He's humble. My husband, and I keep saying this, my husband is the reason why I can truly say a part of my life had changed, because I tried to take the same thing in this relationship, and he immediately stopped me. He said, "You are so beautiful." He said, "Your mouth, oh my God, your mouth is so foul." He said, "Do you realize the things that you say and what you do?" I said, "I never thought about it." And he said, "Do you realize that you are kind of verbal?" So he began to started talking to me and showing me, and I began to open up and really realize and sit down and look at myself and say, "You know what, you're right. You're right." And the first time I even tried to be physical with him, he immediately stopped me. He said, "Look, I don't know what guys you used to talk to or what they've done to you in your past." He said, "But I'm not that type of person." And he truly let me know, I'm not that type of person. And what I will not do is ever put my hands on you. You don't put your hands on me, and everything will be fine. And ever since then, it's been great. We've had a wonderful marriage. I can truly say, most people would say, "Oh, the first couple of years of your marriage is going to be like this. It's going to be." I can truly say the first 7 years of my marriage was, oh my God, excellent, awesome, amazing. Words cannot describe. And it's still there. We've had our ups and downs because the kids become teenagers. My husband do not have any kids by me. All of my kids are his stepkids. So he has raised my kids from being, maybe 6 and on up. So he has raised them now, and they're 28. So we've been together 19 wonderful years. And so that part of my life, we got into church ministry together. We both began to do healing and deliverance. He's a police officer from Mobile, the city of Mobile. And even on his job, he's actually doing healing and deliverance out in the field because he's beginning to teach people how they need to be. So I thank God that we both are operating in the gift of healing and deliverance, bringing people out of even this type of incident, bringing people out of marriages. My husband and I, we have counseled different marriages on how to love your spouse or how to talk to your spouse or what the husband needs to do to help, to be with the wife and what the wife needs to do in order to be a wife. So we both have inspired and have helped couples that have pretty much filed divorce papers, but now they're in their 12th year of marriage. So we both have encouraged different people about stand together and what they need to do to be together and how to continue to love one another, trust one another. And the main thing in a relationship, you definitely got to have communication. You definitely have to be able to trust one another. You have to communicate if you don't do anything else.
Amen.
So that has brought me to the place that I am in with healing and deliverance with my praise. And I can say my praise is my weapon that God has given me. Yes,
Talk a little bit about
indeed.
that. Yeah, talk a little bit about that, because your praise is your weapon. That's what you have on your business cards, and that's your ministry.
Yes,
So talk a little bit about that, and share that with our listeners so they'll know a little bit more about what that means.
The scripture that God had given me to put on the card was, my praise is my weapon. And that's a part of my spiritual life that I go out. And when God called me out, that was a gift that he had given me. I knew nothing about praise dancing. I had never praise danced or did any type of liturgical dancing in my life. And one day at church, God had just started me to moving in a prophetic realm of praise. And as he had given me that gift and that talent, I began to use that. And he caused me to go out and do praise and worship and prophetic dance to bring deliverance and healing to his people. So I can say that my praise is my weapon, because as I'm ministering and dance, I'm not just ministering and dance, but I minister and dance to bring people out of some of the same type of things that I've been in. When I dance prophetically, I'm dancing to deliver the people of God from the things that they've been, whether it's abuse, whether it's drug addiction, whether it's physical or mental, whatever the state may be. I know that God used me for that particular purpose. And that's the part of my life that I love, because it's none of me, and I give it all back to him. I give him the glory because he has brought me so far. He has brought me from out of the clubs. He brought me from cursing, from using drugs. He brought me from being in abusive relationships, abusive marriages. He brought me, so now I can give him all of that back by praise dancing, by doing prophetic dancing to bring the people into the place where they need to be. Because, if somebody really wants to be delivered and healed, you don't have to speak a word. You don't have to say a word. All you have to do is know that, God, I need you. It might just be your appointed time at that time when you in the church house and somebody doing a prophetic dance. And as that dance going forth, guess what? God could be healing you right there on the spot.
Amen. And I pray all my listeners out there, I do pray that you are listening to this word, because this is prophetic in itself. I don't know what you may be going through out there. I don't know if you're being abused. I don't know if it's verbal, physical, mental abuse, whatever it is that you're going through. Felicia's story in itself can tell you, it's showing you that there is deliverance for you out there. You just have to be willing to open up yourself, open up your spirit to God, to know that God has a door open for you. There is new life waiting. There is a way for you. So don't sit out there being all by yourself, being alone. Reach out for help. You've heard Felicia's story and how there are ways for you to get help. Send those messages out there. There are ways for you to let people know that you're hurting, that you're struggling, but never sit home alone thinking that you have to do this all by yourself. Felicia, such an amazing story, such an amazing story. And I pray pray God's blessings continually upon you.
Thank you.
Tell
Thank you.
my listeners, how they can get in touch with you, if they want to be encouraged or inspired or just want to get in touch with you to know a little bit more about your ministry.
They could contact me through via email address. I can leave my email address. It's fgloverbless, and that's BLESS @gmail.com. That's fgloverbless@gmail.com, as well as via Facebook, Instagram. I'm also on Instagram under Felicia Glover. And I also have a travailing prayer conference call every Saturday morning at 5:00 a.m. on that is Central Time.
Amen.
But it's at 5:00 every Saturday morning. And God actually, He's changing that. So I'm going to be doing it on the prayer line, the conference calls at 5:00. At 5 a.m. But it's going to eventually change, and we're going to be doing in a local assembly.
Amen. Awesome. Thank you, Felicia, so much for being on the show today. And to my listeners out there, I pray that you were blessed just by hearing her story. I pray that you were inspired, that you were encouraged, and that you heard some type of strategy or some type of tip that you could use to make your life better. So until next time, I pray that you guys will be educated and inspired. And thank you so much for listening. Hey there, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of Life Strategies with Monique. I truly hope that you were blessed by our guest today, Felicia Glover. Please make sure that you go to the show notes because all of her contact information will be there. If you're interested in being on the show, just go to my website, MoniquePetaway.com. I truly look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, stay educated and empowered.
You've been listening to Life Strategies with Monique.